Jesus may forgive these hoes for their sins in the past, but I don't think that men should. Because women want what other women want, right? Like the easiest way for a woman to vet a guy is to have that guy in the close proximity of attractive women, right? It's why women would rather date a married man than to be with a broke loser that lives in his mom's basement, right? Because the guy's already got pre-selection. It seems like religion ends up being the final form for whores. What I see a lot of when it comes to religion, and especially things like Christianity, is it seems like religion ends up being the final form for whores because they realize that they made a whole bunch of bad choices in their 20s, maybe even into their 30s. And then they get to a point where they want to have kids or they want the protection and provisioning that a man can provide. So they try to get right with God or Jesus and, repent. And, Jesus may forgive these hoes for their sins in their past, but I don't think that men should. Somebody's past behavior and past decisions is a very strong predictor of who they are and who they're going to continue to be in the future. In fact, there's a really fascinating study that they did on regret with men and women. And what they found was when women express regret, and they use this specifically on short-term mating strategies, so friends with benefits, hookup culture, stuff like that, they found that when women expressed specifically regret towards sleeping with a bunch of guys, it didn't change the behavior. In fact, what it did is it guaranteed an increase in the behavior in the future. So any of these gals that says that they've gotten right with God and their past is their past and they're no longer a party girl and they're ready to settle down and all those sorts of things, men should definitely not believe any of that nonsense. Now, if you're dealing with a woman of faith and she's young and she's been in the church and she has a good relationship with her family and her father and she doesn't have any of the red flags and she's religious, good for you, If you're of the same faith and that works for you, then, maybe she's a great candidate. And, you can test that out over a couple of years of dating. But I don't think that specifically seeking religious women is a good idea because a lot of women that are in the church now that are looking for husbands or looking for a guy, whether it's marriage or not, are really bad choices. They're basically chameleons. They're wearing like a mask to try to hide who they really are, under the guise of, I look like you're part of this faith and now I'm part of this faith. So we're of the same faith. So, you can look past my past because I've gotten right with God sort of thing. And it's like, you shouldn't believe that nonsense.
It was really interesting. My husband and I were traveling on a trip to the Dominican Republic. It was our first time staying at an all-inclusive, and there was a lot of honeymooners there. And one of them was this beautiful girl. She looked like Megan Fox. She had these big boobs. Like she was sexy. And she was on her honeymoon, and she told me that she and her husband had not slept together. And because she felt that God would bless her in the marriage, they waited. And so she decided, because she really liked this guy, that she was going to make him wait till marriage, and she did. But I'm looking at her going, you could just look at her knowing this girl has history.
She was a hoe.
And she now, I don't know how I would feel about that as a guy.
You are a plugged-in beta male if you fall for that nonsense. Like if you look at a woman and, you can tell that she's got a history and she's telling the guy that she's going to make him wait till marriage. It's like, what kind of a loser wants to pay more for something that she gave away freely to a whole bunch of other guys in the past? Like, have some dignity for yourself, man.
I look at a lot of these red flags and they're very helpful, but I thought about what are some red flags that men can look for in regards to sex specifically. Are there red flags that a woman is going to kill the bedroom after the marriage?
Yeah. So for the guys that watch your content that, that you mentioned earlier, a lot of guys that come to you, they say that they're in like a sexless type of marriage.
Right.
I think and this is real tough to fix when you're in a marriage, right? Like if you've been married for 10 years and you maybe get it once a year or something like that, if you're lucky and it ends up being starfish, I can tell you that there were very clear indicators that led up to that about her. And, like I said earlier, if a woman truly loves and adores a man, she'll make it very easy and cheap and inexpensive for him to access her time and her sexual opportunities. She'll be very generous with her body. She'll be willing to do things with him that she's been unwilling to do with other guys if she truly loves and adores a man. So it's a very strong indicator if you're in a long-term relationship and your wife or your girlfriend doesn't want to be intimate with you. She has a headache, she's tired, she has to work tomorrow, she didn't take a shower, whatever the excuse is. It's a very strong indicator that she doesn't really like you. Because like I said earlier, men know this, that when they experience genuine burning desire, as I outlined in the chapter in my book, when they truly experience genuine burning desire, a woman will be very generous with her body as frequently as possible. If you say that you like something, to a woman that you're with, and she says, "Oh, I don't do that." Okay, so let's use an example like, I don't know, we'll use something remote like anal. I like that. And then she says, "Well, I don't do that." In your head, you have to add "with you," because she has been willing to do that with another guy that she was hot to trot for. And that's just something that you have to understand about female nature. Like, women don't overtly tell you these things. It's only guys like me out there that are telling you these things about what the translation means and what her behavior means. But I think that the reason why a lot of these guys end up into sexless marriages really is for two. One, they end up marrying women that aren't really their first choice. Like, these women kind of had to settle. They were kind of at the end of the rope. They realized that their friends were getting married and having children. And these women generally have to make some concessions because the guys that they really want don't want to commit to them. So that's the first thing. The second thing as well is there's three Ities that kill all desire in long-term relationships: proximity, familiarity, and exclusivity. And exclusivity deals specifically with sexual exclusivity. The more of those three things that women have with certainty, the less interested she will be in wanting to sleep with you. You're always around. She's familiar with your schedule. She knows that she owns the D and nobody else is touching it and that there's no other woman that's interested in it. When you get to that point where you're no longer novel, then you're a lot less appealing and interesting to that woman, because women want what other women want, right? Like, the easiest way for a woman to vet a guy is to have that guy in the close proximity of attractive women, right? It's why women would rather date a married man than to be with a broke loser that lives in his mom's basement, right? Because the guy's already got pre-selection.
But aren't you taking out a little bit of the hormonal side to things, where men are having such a high biological drive? Then that's why they're always inside. There's biological prompting to want to have sex all the time, and women don't have nearly the amount of testosterone. And the reason I say this, Rich, is just because, like, when my hormone pellets start decreasing, and I'm almost at the point where I have to get repelleted, that last 2 weeks, my attraction for my husband has not changed at all. But my willingness to act on that attraction with him by having sex, that does. So I think there's a little bit more to this.
Yeah, so I mean, you're talking about HRT with hormone replacement therapy and how testosterone is kind of like a driver for libido and sex in both men and women. And that's part of the reason why they give women testosterone pellets or injections or whatever. Familiarity in relationships will always create some level of boredom just over time. It's like, I know that Esther Perel studied this. She's got some good stuff out there. And, if you look at a chart, it's like, for women, attraction for her partner drops like a hockey stick. So it goes kind of straight down and then it slowly goes over time. Whereas for men, it sort of goes slowly over time. So I think that it's just more natural for a woman when she locks a guy down to be less attracted to him, less interested in being intimate with him. But I think that you can push that off and you can delay it more if you manage those three Ities better. If you're a man of high value and attractiveness, and you've got your life squared away. But even then, you're not likely on year 10 to be having the same frequency of sex as you did 3 months into dating, where you're swinging from the chandelier 3 times a night.
Well, I don't think anybody's going to have the same level after that honeymoon phase is over. I think that's just...
It does slow down.
To have that expectation that it's going to maintain at that same level, I don't think is realistic. Right. Do you have relationships where at year 8 that it's as hot and heavy as month 3?
I mean, for me personally, I wouldn't stay in a long-term relationship where she's not hot to trot at pretty close to the same level that went on at the beginning. But I know how to manage women over the long term a little bit better. There's a lot of stuff that I've put in my second book. The first book was more just kind of about like, here, kind of understand these basic concepts about relationships and all this sort of stuff. My second book's more about how to manage the relationship over the long term for guys. And there's some useful stuff in there for women too. But the management of a relationship over the long term to continue to maintain intimacy at the frequency that keeps you happy isn't that easy. And it's quite a bit of work. And
Yeah.
your reward for all of that as a guy is you don't get any of the novelty that you used to get before when you were dating a whole bunch of other women. You're kind of stuck with the same gal. So there's ways to manage it and minimize it and slow the decline or the rate of it. But I don't think that a lot of the guys that are stuck in sexless marriages are going to ever find themselves in a position where it's like all of a sudden overnight or in a week's time or a month's time, his wife is throwing her body at him. There might be situations like, her hormones are not in balance, right? So a hormone replacement clinic might be helpful in that sense. If she genuinely loves the guy and is still attracted to him, it's just her libido isn't there because her hormones are out of whack or she's hitting menopause or something like that. So there's that, right? There's other things that you can do to manage the course of the relationship and her desire for you, which again, I've broken down in the second book, which comes out in the fall, but it's very difficult. And it's extremely frustrating for guys. And for most of them, it's not a salvageable sinking ship. It's something that you often just have to let go down and start fresh with a new relationship, but not make the same stupid mistakes that you did last time. One of them is generally guys inviting women into their lives that aren't that hot for them. That's, I hate to tell the guys out there watching this, but a lot of guys are in sexless marriages because you married a woman and you weren't her first choice.
I think that book is going to be so needed because, like you said, getting into a relationship is easy, but how do you maintain that long term? And that's really where the information that we're missing.
Sometimes the very things that are good for the relationship or that are good for her may be the very things that she wants you to stop doing or to do less of. And just because she tells you that she doesn't like something or that she would prefer that you did something else doesn't mean that you go and do it. Your role as a guy in the relationship is to lead it and to lead her and to make sure that you're basically in a driver's seat. And that's going to force you to do certain things that she may criticize you for. A real man would insert da-da-da-da.
Right.
Or, if you were a real man, you would do ba-da-da-da-da. And there's a swath of guys out there right now that are doing things like Choreplay, like they're doing more dishes, they're cutting the lawn more, they're putting the kids to sleep more, they're bathing them on the bathing nights, hoping that they're going to get more enthusiastic sex. And Choreplay doesn't work. It doesn't turn women on. It doesn't make them want to throw their bodies at these men. The management of the relationship over the long term, it sounds like it's a stuff that your audience probably needs a little bit more on. And I think if they get to it earlier than later, then they might be in a salvageable position to sort of turn things around. But a lot of what guys want to get out of their marriage or their relationship really boils down to two things. And it's one, for the guy being as attractive as possible, and two, being as valuable as possible. If you're out of shape, if you're fat, if you're incompetent, if you're not resourceful, if you can't hold down a job, if you're proving to the household that you're not an asset, you're more of a liability, you're really going to struggle convincing her to want to enthusiastically share her body with you. She's just not going to do it. And no amount of Googling, answers or going to Reddit or watching YouTube videos can solve that. It's going to require that you step up and you do some work on yourself and you level up in the areas that you need to. And then on top of that, apply a little bit of game to the marriage or the relationship over the long term so that you can get her to respond in the direction that you want. And I know there's a lot of guys out there that'll be like, well, that sounds like a lot of work or the juice isn't worth the squeeze. And maybe you're right. Maybe the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Maybe it's time to, beat it to death and bury it 6 feet under behind the barn and just call it a day and start with a brand new relationship and just end that one and let her go.
I'm right in the middle of developing a course, and it's about the long term, how to sustain exactly what you're doing with your book, but in a course form, because it is such a different game of just going out and trying to get laid. Guys have to be so on point if they want to have a chance. And they're just going to have to know this. There is work to be done here. Sorry, there's no opting out if you want to have a chance of success.
Be attractive, don't be unattractive.
So
As
your book's
simple as
coming
that
out in the fall?
I'll have it out for my conference for the guys that are there in October, and then we'll probably release it in November. So I'll let you know when it's out.
Well, cool. I'm looking forward to that.
You may not like some of the stuff in it, Monica, but
guarantee I'll love it.
Probably get through it and be like, I bet that stuff works.
I know what works. And even as a woman, I can know when there's times when I'm not liking things that my husband does or says. But at the logical side of me goes, I understand why this has to be this way. Like,
are there things that he ever does that you don't like or that you would prefer him to do differently that actually turn you on?
the best story I have for that was early on in our relationship. I was standing at the refrigerator with him and we were arguing about something. I don't even remember what it was, but he was really standing his ground on something, on whatever it was. And I was pissed off that I was not winning the argument, but at the same time I was turned on because
there you go.
He refused to back down. So I was like, what's going on here? Where I realized within myself that this makes no sense to me. Yeah, it did. I was a little bit turned on.
All right, guys, I really hope that you enjoyed that clip. If you want to check out the full-length podcast episode, you can find that right over here. Also, make sure you visit my website over here where you'll find my supplements, the opportunity to book me privately one-on-one for coaching, and most importantly, my new School of Unplugging, which you'll find on the courses tab. Newer to the channel, hit subscribe.